So guys, we are back looking at Brian's daughter's 2005 Legacy GT. We did several videos on this car in the past. Just Sunday night, her mother called me. She'd gone and got an oil change at a quick lube place, and as soon as she left, her car started cutting off on her, stalling out. She could restart it without issue, but it would stall out again and did not want to stay running. So could not think what in the world could be wrong from just going and getting an oil change as to why it wouldn't keep running and why it would stall out. So I started thinking about things that possibly could have gotten screwed up, like one that's typical on Subarus, especially modern CVT equipped Subarus, is that the lube places will drain the CVT fluid, or in this case the automatic transmission fluid, and then will double fill the engine oil. But that was not the case here. The transmission fluid was where it should be, as I struggle to get the dipstick back in the tube here, and the engine oil was in the correct location as well. So I went ahead and looked at any kind of vacuum lines, anything that looked out of place, anything that may have been broken or screwed up by, you know, someone putting their hand on something and leaning on it, as we know that their Impreza had that same thing happen, as the upper radiator neck was broken when a coolant flush was done because someone leaned on the radiator and broke the freaking neck off. So let's get underneath. I wanted to make sure that the oil filter was on in place, make sure that I wasn't seeing anything dripping or leaking. So I was just kind of scratching my head here. Checked the battery terminals, made sure that they were all tight, and you know, that the battery cable wasn't coming loose, that wouldn't really cause a stalling issue. So let's look here. I actually found the receipt for the job performed, what was performed, and lo and behold, looky there, we have an air filter replacement. We didn't get just an oil and filter replacement, they changed the air filter. So now we have a direction to look at on this vehicle. Let's go check out the air filter, the air box, the housing. As you see, the snorkel is off because when I first looked at it, I noticed that the hose was not fully seated on the air box, nor was the clamp tight. Also, upon further review, I see that the air box is not even clipped in correctly. You can see that big gap right there. They didn't even put the back of the air box into the holes on the front of the airbox where the cleats lock in and align the airbox. So yeah, that's a big issue as well. Let's go ahead and pop the mass air sensor off, or pop the mass air sensor connector off here. A little hard to do one-handed holding the phone, but we'll get that out of there. We'll loosen up this intake clamp. We'll go ahead and pull the back side of the box out, check the air filter, make sure it's correct. At first I was making sure there was no plastic left on the air filter, because I've seen that in the past where you know, an air filter has been replaced and the plastic was left on the filter, but luckily that's not the case here. This is the correct filter. There was no plastic on it. I even looked up in the intake tube to make sure, you know, nothing was stuck in there, limiting airflow. The mass air sensor looks to be okay. Was hoping they didn't spray anything on it, try to clean it. So we'll go ahead and get this all put together properly and see if that will remedy the issue with the car wanting to stall out and die on us. So guys, I'm just sitting now trying to do an idle relearn, hoping that the only issue here was the fact the airbox wasn't put back together correctly and that the intake hose was not tight to the airbox. Looking back at the ticket, seeing that they put an air filter in there, and I'm not above blasting somebody. It was take 5 oil change on Highway 160. Oil change and an air filter, and yeah, car started stalling out immediately after she left. 160 and Fort Mill is an extremely busy highway in the afternoon, and for someone to have their car stall out on them like that is a very dangerous situation. She was able to get it back to them. They said, well, nothing we did had anything to do with your car stalling out. It's nothing we did, so beat it, basically. But it looks like it was something you did. That air filter, it's a sad day when a quick lube place can't even replace an air filter correctly, and not own up to it either when a young female customer's car that, you know, drove an hour and 30 minutes perfectly fine to get the oil change, and after the oil change stalled out 5-6 times directly after pulling out your premises. There is a correlation there. Something you did was the cause of that issue. I don't know. I got the air conditioning running now. I let it run up to temperature, got the air conditioning running, about to put the headlights on, put some loads on it, put it in gear, see if we can keep from stalling out. She noted that it would run fine in idle, but when she went to drive, as soon as she'd start slowing down, it would kill over, which if the, you know, the idle's not set right, that would be it. So, I don't know. We're going to sit here and let it run for quite a while, do an idle relearn, and hopefully that's all we've got to do here, and she can get back down to college, because she was home for the weekend, and one little oil change place screwed up her whole weekend plans of getting an oil change and heading back to college. So I'll check back in when I know something more.
Well, looky here. We've got this clamp and this part of the hose, and this part of the hose and the clamp set straight. The airbox is properly assembled, and our mass air sensor wiring harness is properly routed, along with the power steering hose down there. And look, it's running beautifully again.
So guys, it's been a couple of days. I had to chill out before making the outro, the ending conclusion of this video, because my blood pressure was way on up there. So got it back together, got the car back to her. She drove it all the way back to Columbia, no other issues. That was 100% the issue. There was the airbox, the clamp on the hose being wrong, not sealed properly. So got that knocked out. Thankfully, didn't hurt anything, didn't cause any issues. It was just an inconvenience, and it had to sit in a parking lot overnight. Now, with that said, a little bit of history. She took the car to this same Take 5 for the previous oil change, and they didn't even tighten the drain plug. She drove it down the road, drain plug fell out, oil out. Luckily, she saw it as soon as it happened, cut the key off, did not harm the engine, which is pretty rare for a Subaru to have oil dump out of it and not spin a rod bearing, but she cut it off at the right time, caught it. They were able to put a new drain plug in it, fill it back with oil, and go about their day. Take 5, of course, said, oh, we have no responsibility. It was nothing we did, yada, yada, yada. We won't even give you your money back. All they offered her was a free oil change. I don't know about you guys, but if a place, Quick Lube, did an oil change for me and they left the damn drain plug out, I sure as hell aren't taking it back to them for a second chance to screw my car up. So she went back to them again this time for whatever reason and got the oil change. Now I can give them credit. They did get the oil change correct this time. But they did sell her an air filter, and of course, as we saw, they weren't competent enough to install an air filter on her Legacy GT. Side note to that was the Firestone that she took it to after they claimed that nothing they did caused the car to shut off. It ain't our problem. Take it somewhere else. The Firestone hooked the scanner up, had several guys look at it, and none of them figured out the issue. None of them saw the issue with the hose and the airbox being askew. So, not much stock in that Firestone either. But guys, it's just the way it is. I saw it as a Snap-on dealer going into Quick Lube places like this. They hire mostly unskilled labor. They have an extremely high turnover rate because they pay diddly squat. Very rarely do you find competent mechanics technicians in places like this. There's lots and lots of instances of oil outs or transmission destruction on the CVTs, as I said earlier, about them draining the CVT instead of the engine because they can't tell the difference between the engine and the transmission, and overfilling or double filling the engine with oil, causing issues for both components, which neither are cheap. But you know, not being able to replace engine oil, not being able to put an air filter in, if you can't do those rudimentary services, you got no business working on a vehicle. Like, I understand there's a learning curve, but you do that in your own time on your own vehicle. You do not learn on a customer vehicle, potentially blowing up their engine, or, you know, worse, if the Quick Lube kind of place does brakes, you know, you screw up a brake job, and that's somebody's life, multiple people's life on the line. But that's just the gamble you take going to these places. So, yeah, there you have it. Take 5 would not take responsibility, funny, for their screw up and left a 19-year-old girl stranded. Call a tow truck, take it to a mechanic, not our problem. You know, just think about it for a minute. If that was your daughter, your niece, your wife, girlfriend, fiance, or it doesn't even have to be that way. It could be your son, could be your brother, your uncle, cousin, grandma, grandpa. Could be any one of your family members to be treated that way. Now, again, I went back over there, tried to find the 2 that worked on the car, but they were off. Talked to the manager on duty, who looked to be about 21 years old, and the lights were on, but no one was home. He was kind of just nodding along to what I said, so I just gave up. I figured, you know, why am I wasting my breath? This is falling upon deaf ears. These guys don't care. They don't get paid enough to care, which I can understand that. But when people's lives are on the line working on their vehicles, you have to care whether you're getting paid to or not. And if you can't justify the care for the pay, move on. So, guys, just be careful whenever you take your vehicle to be serviced by one of these quick lube places, whether it be Take 5, whether it be a Goodyear, a Firestone, a Pep Boys, Precision Tune, any of these kinds of quick lube places that do any kind of services more than an oil change, or even the ones that do just oil changes. You are taking a gamble with whoever is working on your car there. It's always best to take it to a competent and certified mechanic or technician. But just keep that in mind. That quick convenience and that small price tag might end up costing you a ton in repair bills, headaches, and possibly injuries.
So guys, sorry to break in. While editing this video, I got a call from a local shop to come look at a 2010 Forester that ironically had been to a quick lube place, had an air filter replacement done. They disconnected the mass air pigtail and let it set on the cylinder head and melted that pigtail to the cylinder head. So not 1 but 2 Subarus this week were destroyed or immobilized by a quick tune service for an air filter. Now that bare wire actually shorted, and as you see here, no check engine light, which is the main way to know if the computer is alive or not when you turn the key on for the bulb check. So basically this Forester had cut off and was towed to the shop. They put a new pigtail on it, and then once they got the pigtail on it, they put the key in and went to start it up, and it did nothing. Nothing happened when you turned the key on. As you saw, the check engine light wasn't on. The fuel pump didn't run, nothing at all. It didn't even try to crank. So obviously when that shorted, it shorted out and burnt up something. So they didn't have a clue, called me up. I came down there, I was looking at a wiring diagram I pulled up on my iPhone screen. Not the best of parameters to work in, but I was able to finally trace back through the wiring diagram where that pin that had melted on the pigtail looped back to, and it had a common tie through to the main relay and the main relay fuse. Looked under the glove box right above the PCM here and found that that fuse thankfully had popped and protected the circuit, which is the 15 amp fuse seen right there at the top of the screen in the middle. So really quick, here's the wiring diagram, and this is the 15 amp fuse I was referring to right here that feeds our main relay. Now if we go down through the wiring and trace this wire across our diagram, we'll see here that this goes all the way down. It connects in with the electronic throttle control relay, but it goes across our diagram and it goes to C. So we'll have to switch over to the next diagram, and C meets up right here. And if we follow that line or that wire across, we will see that it gets to the yellow wire with blue stripe. That is the mass airflow and intake air temperature sensor. So when that shorted against the cylinder head, bare metal, that pulled too much amperage through that circuit and blew the fuse that was powering the main relay. Put a new fuse back in. The check engine light came on. We had communication with the scan tool again. Just scanning it, had a check engine light and a traction in-op. Looks like we got some communication codes, likely caused by the unplugging and plugging of the mass air sensor, the PCM and all that. So
We've got a generic PO700 for the transmission. We've got a 1718 CAN communication. So likely this is going to be due to the PCM being disconnected. And we got some air intake, mass air sensor codes, which all are typical of what happened. So we're going to go ahead and clear all this out and restart and let them drive it till it has all the monitors flagged and completed, and should be good to go. So cleared the codes, everything's gone out now. So we'll let them drive it until all the drive cycles are complete, and should be good. My part of this diagnostic on this vehicle is complete. Kind of hard to see, but you can see our check engine light is illuminating now, meaning that the PCM is alive and is communicating. So all good signs.
With that said, thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. I will see you all in the next one.